Firstly, I'd like to thank Matthew from miniwargaming.com for providing the miniature for this tutorial, and Justin from Secret Weapon Miniature for the washes. Now, I'm a big fan of the original look on the concept art for the Zlanfos, so I've decided to show you guys how I achieved a similar effect on this Zlanfos soldier. I begin using Vallejo Model Air's metallic chrome to create the metallic base coat for the rest of the tutorial. Now, to create the really interesting metallic blue effect, I'm using Secret Weapon Miniatures washes. I'm doing kind of a reverse zenithal lighting here, where I'm using the wash from underneath to tint the shadows of the metal. So I'm using sapphire here to give the blue tint. Now, it might come out a bit strong, but that's okay, because at the next step we'll tone it down with a black wash. But just remember, we're trying to hit the undersides of the model here. It might have been better for me to actually not base this miniature before doing this, but as I'd already super glued him onto his base at this point, it was too late for that. The next step in shading the metal is using soft body black from Secret Weapon Miniatures. This is to further darken the shadow areas underneath the model, and it will make the metal look really cool. As the wash is also matte, it will dull the shine of the metal, but because of its translucency, there'll be a tiny bit of shine still coming through, which is kind of cool. I hope you agree that the effect comes out really nicely. There's a really nice blue and black gradient on top of the metal. To differentiate the areas of the body of the Zlanfos soldier and his armour, I'm using an armour wash, but I'm actually using this to tint the organic parts, I guess, of the model so that they're slightly different in colour to the metal armour from the base coat. Now, because we're just using a wash here, there's still going to be a metallic sheen coming through at the end of this, but to be honest, I really actually like this effect. It gives enough differentiation between the armour and the rest of the miniature, but it still has this cool sci-fi look to it because of the metallic shine coming through. This is probably the most long-winded part of this tutorial. After this, everything again speeds up. I'm using a gloss varnish here to seal all our previous work and to ensure that the surface is smooth enough for the oil wash that follows. Filling some black oil paint with mineral spirits, I've created a wash and I'm liberally applying this over the entire miniature. I'm using the brush to wick off any excess oil wash before it's dried from areas where I don't want it, just to make the cleanup step go that much quicker. despite wicking off the oil paint, I'm still having to come back after the oil has dried with a cotton bud dampened in mineral spirits, just to make sure that we've definitely got all the black oil paint off of the places where we don't want it. Again, we varnished the model to seal our previous work, but this time I'm using a satin varnish to dull down the overall metallic sheen and the glossiness that might have come about from the oil paint. You could, if you wanted, end the painting here and you'll have a pretty decent tabletop miniature. I've gone the extra mile here and I've decided to paint areas of the miniature with a glowing blue effect. This particular sculpt has a nice area on the back that you can paint up and to apply this glowing effect to, and there's also the eyes and parts on the front of the miniature's torso that could also be painted, along with the weapon as well. I'm using Spell Slinger Blue from Minitaire paints to achieve this. It's a good demonstration of the fact that you can brush these on by hand straight from the bottle without needing to be thinned. I mixed a little snow white into the spell slinger blue just to make a highlight colour, and I'm trying to highlight the individual ridges of this backpack area, as well as to touch up some of the blue areas on the front of the miniature. Again, you could skip this step if you didn't want to do it. This effect at the moment is mostly going to get wiped out with the glow effect I do with the airbrush after this, but you know, I did it anyway. Carefully I apply snow white from the airbrush to sort of create the glow effect, which unfortunately wiped out most of the work in the previous step in this case, but it still looks cool overall, so I kept it on the model and didn't take it any further. I decided the front of the gun could use a bit of this white as well to create a glowing effect around the end of the barrel. After masking the holes on the base, I'm applying a very slightly thinned PVA mix as a first step towards basing this miniature. Once I've covered the base in PVA, I apply a mixture of various different types of sand and small stones to create the terrain on the base. Once the basing has dried, I apply a very thin mix of PVA on top just to add an extra layer of glue that will hopefully keep the sand and small rocks where they are when we dry brush them and paint them later. I'm using Minitaire Paint's Earth as a base coat for the base. I purposely let some of the overspray from the airbrush get onto the miniature to represent dirt build-up around the feet. Once the base is dry, I use trusty Devlin mud to add some shading to the sand and rocks and around the feet. Once the Devlin mud was dry, I did a quick dry brush using Ancient Bone from Minitaire Paint. To finish off the base's paint job, I'm using Raven Black to just go around the outside of the base. I also use my airbrush just to dry this paint off and apply a couple of layers just to make sure it's absolutely covered and smooth. To add some more visual interest to the base, I decided to use super glue and some flock foliage just to get some green on it, a bit of nature. I use a couple of different coloured flocks just to make it look a bit more varied than just one colour green, as well as using a sponge foliage piece that I teared off a larger block just to get some more three-dimensional look on the foliage. There we have it, the completed miniature. I hope you guys like this. If you want to see more tutorials and the like, then please subscribe to my channel. If you've got any comments or questions, pop them down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.